Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Inside Tennessee. I'm your moderator, John North. John Becker is away. This is a show we've been looking forward to presenting to you for several weeks, and it has to do with an extraordinary disaster that East Tennessee and Western North Carolina have been dealing with now since late September. Our two guests are men who have been on the front lines witnessing how to deal with that disaster, and they are responding to it. That's Jeremy Faison, a state lawmaker from Cocke County, and also Steve Borden, who is the TDOT District 1 Director. Thanks to both of you. We look forward to the conversation with you, and joining us are our panelists this morning. We have Don Bosch, a Democrat and attorney here in Knoxville,
Good
Tennessee.
morning, John. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Eddie Smith, who has many titles, former lawmaker, Republican.
Pick one.
And
Pick
just
one.
a guy, yep. Just a guy.
A man who has been there in the state legislature, knows what it's like to try to deal with fixing problems.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate both of you being on. So as I said, late September, Helene strikes, the remnants of it. Extraordinary, beyond I think you all knew something was coming, maybe not to this degree, and you've been dealing with it both respectively since then. We have a lot we want to talk about in that regard in terms of recovery for the thousands of people who have been affected in East Tennessee, up and down the mountains. But let me start with this question right now. Right now, as we sit here today in what's probably, the 51st day since the storm hit, what's the biggest challenge? Steve Borden, let's start with you.
Well, I think for us is the continued momentum to continue to see through what you're starting, right? There's an initial part of this that you're doing this response in the first 24 to 36 hours. In the first 100 hours of what you're doing is you're recovering certain routes, reconnecting, but you know, you're a sprint at some point, but at some point you're transitioning to a marathon as we start building back and restoring some really large pieces of infrastructure. We lost 2 interstates during this, which was unprecedented. Over the years, we've lost I-40 a number of times,
right,
hurricanes and other things, but never lost I-26. Losing the connectivity that we had between us and North Carolina, what it does to communities, has been astonishing. Seeing communities at the height of this storm being cut off, the 49 routes that were shut down. We're down to 9 now. But we got to be able to continue to deliver to the citizens that we serve. Chairman Faison and both of us, we do a lot of things, but at the end of the day, you're in people business, right? Mm-hmm. We serve communities, and I think that's the big thing, is to continue to serve, but continue to listen and see what we can do to restore life as best we can to normal in a tragic event.
Representative Faison, your county, your community, Cosby, was among those hardest hit. I think we had, 6 to 8 counties roughly that really took sort of the brunt of it. And you've been there trying to help constituents and see what you can do about bringing the community back to life. How are things going? What's your biggest challenge?
So, just to start out with, that storm was tremendous.
Yes, sir.
My uncle is, I guess, 81 years old. He's born and raised right there in Cosby. He said nobody alive today has ever seen what we just saw. So the initial of just responding to flooding that you don't typically see, and way past the 100-year floodplain, helping people find the right help. Our biggest deal right now, and we're so grateful for the love that's poured out. The love that's poured out on my community is greater than the storm that hit us and destroyed us. So I just want to say thank you for the people who've poured out their love. Navigating the rebuild is huge. Tonight, Steve and I were talking about needing help with roads. I'm from a distressed county, rebuilding roads to be able for commerce to take place. And then navigating insurance companies is a real situation, and we have people who've literally lost everything that were outside of a 100-year floodplain, so they didn't even have flood insurance. Helping them, trying to find the resources, whether it's federal resources, state resources, or then just people giving out of their pocket, has at times proven very heartwarming and at times proved very frustrating. And so we're in that stage right now. What can we do to help our people, connect them to the right resources? And you'd be surprised how few resources there are when it comes to rebuilding something that you've lost.
So Steve, you're TDOT, of course, and so your primary responsibility is road and infrastructure with connectivity, as you described it. And I hear Jeremy's story, and you touch on sort of the needs way beyond roads. I mean, people needing food, water, medicine, insurance, homes. But staying to roads, I can think of other disasters through Tennessee. I can think of the floods in Nashville, a couple of bouts with tornadoes. Have we ever seen anything on a geographic scope like this? I mean, this is I don't know that even people in Knoxville, who don't often get a little further east of here, understand the geographic range of destruction. Can you tell us just a little bit about what we're looking at? You mentioned all the routes being closed, but a little more detail about that, please.
Certainly, and to echo that and what Chairman said, I've been working with the department for 35 years. I've been through tornadoes, I've been through snowstorms, I've been through the Gatlinburg wildfires. We were the single largest responding agency as a department. But to see the scale of what's happened here, my first 2 weeks on the job when I became a regional maintenance engineer, we had floods on the Nolichucky and Greene County. It was 2001. It was a pretty good sized flood. But what you see here is a scale beyond what anything I've ever seen. When you look at the amount of rain, as we begin to approach this storm, as the hurricane was heading towards the East Tennessee, Western North Carolina area, it didn't look like rain was going to be an impact. We've had that before. In 2019, I had 77 slides in East Tennessee alone, lost roads. It was the rivers. Because when you look at the geography of what's going on there, the scale is amazing. And there's a lot of drone footage, there's a lot of TV footage, but until you sit in those places and the heartbreak of seeing these communities and change for a long time, right? It's going to be a while.
It's extraordinary what the region's going through. Western North Carolina, very much the same. We want to continue our discussion. We're going to take a commercial break right now. You're watching Inside Tennessee. We are back, and you're looking at some of the video that has been taken that shows some of what was affected and now is in recovery stage when it comes to infrastructures, roadways. It's been extraordinary what we've seen both to highways, other government infrastructure, people's homes, people's businesses, employers. It's been a profound up and down East Tennessee impact. And so we're talking to Steve Borden and Jeremy Faison about recovery. And Don, I think you had a follow-up question.
Steve, just one final question. How many bridges did we lose that have to be replaced now? Because that's a major, it's one thing to lay new asphalt and foundation, but bridges take time. How many bridges did we lose?
So for us as the department, we lost 5 total washouts of bridges. We've got a couple more that are having long-term repairs being done. But when you look about that Nolichucky Basin, the counties along the Nolichucky River alone lost 7 more. And then as you go across the other counties, the numbers are pretty staggering. And like you said, it takes a while. Bridges don't go quick, right?
Right.
And when you look at some video like on 107 and the scale as you talked about before, we see that bridge being taken out in video, the water's to the top of the bridge. The normal flow is 60 feet below there. There's a 60-foot wall of water that was washing through that basin, which is staggering.
And we can talk about all of the water and all the devastation, but let's talk about the human aspect of this. Your employees don't just work there; they live there. Your constituents are affected. You can replace physical things, but we've also seen huge loss of life through this. So, how's it affecting your employees through TDOT? And then, Jeremy, what you're seeing from your constituents there in Cobb County and some of the areas?
Yeah, absolutely. And you pointed out there, Eddie, that the Department of Transportation, TDOT, is a unique place in that we have offices, at least one and multiple ones in all of these counties. So these people that respond to these emergencies, these events in such a storm as that we had and disasters, they're serving in the communities they live in. The people that they're literally rescuing are people that they do life with, they go to church with, they're in their community, they went to high school with. And then as they're in the midst of that storm and you're fighting to recover and work, there's a pause after you get through that initial weeks of, and you go back and reflect, and all of a sudden you're seeing the farms that maybe your parents used to work in the tomato fields when they were young, and they're gone. The houses of the community, of the people that you've done life with, and they're gone at the same time.
But Jeremy, describe that gone, because you were telling us, you know, it's in a fire you might have a chimney and a foundation left. That's not the case now.
No, what we've seen where I'm from is the flood came so hard, so swift, from the Nolichucky to the French Broad to the Pigeon, that there are places I could take you in my county that there used to be a structure. All you see now is a clump of rocks or sand. Literally, it's completely wiped it out. There are places that there is no longer property. So even if they were to rebuild, they don't have property to rebuild on. And just briefly, some of the stories that you've seen, I go to church with people who've lost everything at my church. One of my customers is the lady, I think y'all might have done an interview with her. She's a senior citizen, and she swam from her home trying to rescue her dog. The river came up, so it was almost like a flash flood. At one point, within 20, 30 minutes, it rose 5 feet. And hearing those stories, I visited with several people on River Road this week, and I walked through a trailer it's across the street from the river, and the water level was eye level with me. So I'm 6'1", and the water level inside of his trailer was that high. So every single thing his trailer wasn't destroyed miraculously, but everything he owned, whether it was clothes, no matter what you can imagine that you own in your trailer, was completely gone. Floating upside down. Anything that was of value was ruined. There's a hygiene problem, because who knows what came in with the river with a flood like this.
Toxicity problem.
There's a toxicity.
Yeah.
I own a pest control business, and ants were brought in. It's the craziest thing. So now we have all these people who've reached out to us that live on the river. Ants often, to save their colony, they'll create a ball, and they'll sacrifice the ones at the bottom, but they'll lock hands or lock mandibles,
sure,
and they'll float till they get to a place
wow.
to stop. Well, often they got to a place to stop, and it was at a structure that wasn't taken out. And so now all of a sudden people are getting back to their homes, and it's completely covered with ants. Just little things like that. And then hearing stories of children who've lost an animal or lost a toy. Who knows where it's at? You know, this has been something that we've never experienced. I've talked to people in Florida who go through flooding. They're used to that. The water comes in, the water goes out, and everything's still there.
They built and designed for that problem.
Right. We didn't build for that. The water came in and took out what we had and kept going. That's the craziness of what's happened in East Tennessee.
Are there constituents that you know who are either not going to come back or just have no chance of rebuilding?
We do have constituents that live off of the French Broad who've reached out to me, and they're saying it's not possible to find flood insurance. I have a friend who lost 5 structures. He rented out cabins on the French Broad River. All 5 cabins are completely wiped out, and so they can't rebuild because you can't insure that now. So yeah, that's a real issue for us.
As I said at the start of this block, I've just been struck at the breadth of the affect from this. It's extraordinary. So many different aspects of this storm have affected so many different kinds of people, and we haven't even talked about employers, people who maybe aren't going to have a job. Their employers, if they're lucky, they will rebuild, but it may be a while. More to talk about, but we are going to take a break right now on Inside Tennessee. Come back. It's Inside Tennessee. We are back. Steve Borden is one of our guests. Steve Borden from TDOT. What are we looking at there?
Well, what you're seeing there is part of the remnants of the 107 bridge in Greene County that was taken out by the floods.
Extraordinary.
The 27th, it is.
Just wiped it away.
Wiped it away. That bridge is 60 feet above the water. As you see, as you're standing there and looking down That's still higher flow than normal that you're seeing in the video, but that's the type of force of the water that we saw.
I remember seeing a picture of what that bridge looked like before it was swept away, and I was like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. Don Bosch, I think you had a question.
I do. Jeremy, unfortunately, as so many things in today's culture do, this became a little politicized, and there were some beliefs that somehow the federal government wasn't stepping up and doing their role by way of support and aid. You were boots on the ground, so to speak. You were there. Did you see any delay from any governmental authority in their assistance in being able to help you guys?
So in my county, I can only speak to my county, sure. I heard all sorts of stories.
Right.
I actually flew several times into North Carolina and heard stories firsthand of issues with FEMA and other government officials. But as it deals with Cocke County, the federal government was there. And FEMA was there, FEMA was there, right. State government was there. Pete Buttigieg himself, obviously we're on completely different sides of the aisle.
But it shouldn't matter at that point, should it?
He came to my county, and I stood shoulder to shoulder with him, because this is not about politics for me. This is about my county being rebuilt. He brought $30-something million to our state for us to rebuild. I was thankful for that. So I would just say that from my perspective, not what I've heard, but from my perspective in my county, the right agency showed up and did a good job.
People need to hear those stories, and that's why I wanted to hear your view on it, and that's good.
Well, and two things that I want to hit. One, $30 million. I served on transportation in the House. $30 million barely builds one bridge, and you're looking at 9 bridges that we know of, more in the county. So there's a lot that's going to have to take place. The state's going to have to step up. The feds are going to have to step up with some infrastructure dollars. But then we've talked about the human component. We've got the holidays coming up. Thanksgiving is 2 weeks away. Christmas is right around the corner. What can people do right now to help the constituents, the people in these communities that have been affected as we go into this holiday season?
So I think that's a wonderful question. There are families who are struggling. There are several places that you can give, that you can donate to. Mountain Ways is right here. That's the one that Dolly Parton gave to. That's the one that the Walmart was a big part of. My church, several churches in our community are helping facilitate things for families who've lost everything. If you are interested and you would like to help someone be able to enjoy Christmas, you reach out to my office, just Jeremy Faison, State Representative Jeremy Faison. We can put you in contact with that. You can also go to Mountain Ways. They will help you. They will find ways for you to be able to give and help some of these people who've lost everything be able to have some semblance of Christmas. And then remember, I believe in the power of prayer. Pray for people who they literally don't have a house to celebrate Christmas in. They're in a tiny home. They're in a camper. They've had to be in hotels. Remember them. Pray for them. And then if you can help, dig in deep. Help them out.
I want to talk a couple sort of factual aspects here right quick. Mm-hmm. Dollar amount for recovery of infrastructure. Do you have any idea?
So if you look at it from the state side, you're probably talking somewhere in the neighborhood of over $500 billion of damage.
$500 billion. Million, excuse me.
$500 million.
I thought you were going to go for the B.
Yeah, so, but that's pretty extensive, and as you know, we're a pay-as-you-go state, so there is the opportunity, and the federal government did step up and give us $32 million quick release dollars. We go through emergency response that is able to give us reimbursement for our roadways. Also FEMA does for debris clearing, and I will say, unlike any storm that I've ever been a part of, the amount of debris that's been collected so far as we've been picking up. We had a stat a few weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, you could fill Neyland Stadium to the top of the uprights with the debris that we've already cleared off roadways. But that takes time to get that. We work through the process, and then eventually we will get reimbursed. So at that point, the state has to do that. And then you look at what, as Chairman Faison said, the counties, right? I was with Carter County early on. They have around $60 million worth of infrastructure damage on their own. Cocke County's in the same place. Johnson County's in the same place. So, when you talk overall, that the word with the B in it, the billion, for all of us in totality is going to be approaching that with the infrastructure damage that we've seen.
To put it mildly, it really is an extraordinary disaster, which we will be talking about for the rest of our lives, I suspect. Yes. Steve Borden, Jeremy Faison, thanks so much for coming in. We do really appreciate you talking about this, reminding people about what so many of our neighbors are going through, and also giving us a little hope as we recover from this. We are going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little politics. You're watching Inside Tennessee. Inside Tennessee, it's our last block. We want to thank Jeremy Faison and Steve Borden once again for taking the time to speak to us. I also wanted to remind you that on our website, WBIR.com, we have a lot of resources, lists, stories, ways you can help, and also ways that you can take advantage of the help that is out there. A lot of people still haven't registered for FEMA help. That is something that you have that's available to you if you have been affected, and a lot of our counties in our viewing area were right in the middle of the storm destruction. You've got, I think, until January the 7th to apply for that kind of help. You should take advantage of that. Don, Eddie, thoughts on our two gentlemen that we're visiting?
Well, let's take politics out of it, and this is a political show, but the response that everybody has made has been remarkable because, again, as Steve had suggested, the breadth of this devastation is unlike anything the state has seen. Again, the Gatlinburg wildfires, I remember the floods in Nashville, the tornadoes that hit Nashville. Those were a little more limited in geographic scope. This has affected so many people, and we're really fortunate just here in Knoxville proper that we didn't see much, but we were on the edge of being much more of a part of that too. But I'm impressed with Representative Faison and the other representatives from that area with FEMA and what they've done. The mythology that they weren't helping and somehow it was political is just that. When we talk about the $30 million that came to Representative Faison's community, that was the emergency. Right now, here it is. There's a lot more behind that. But it's going to be an interesting challenge with Tennessee being a pay-as-we-go state. We've done well with that when we've had ordinary maintenance. This is extraordinary.
Eddie?
Well, and I think you go back and look at, obviously what we did a couple of years ago with the Improve Act in Tennessee. That's at least given some extra
dollars. Which, by the way, you were
dollars.
Chairman when that came out, wasn't it?
I was not chairman. I was Vice Chairman of Education. I was on the Transportation Committee.
There you go.
But, that was looking ahead with Governor Haslam that we were going to need some additional funds. Then we have the Infrastructure Improvement Act that came out of D.C. So there's going to be some available funds that the state can draw down to help with that. But again, when you start talking into the Bs,
absolutely,
that's massive devastation, especially for a lot of these rural counties that just don't have the tax base that we do in Knox County to be able to recover very quickly. So this is going to be. We talked about the infrastructure costs. We didn't talk about the economic cost of lost wages and lost jobs that may come for the years into the future.
And we're to build roads and bridges now back to places where there are no longer homes.
Right.
So.
Correct.
Right. We wanted to talk about the loss of employers. Sorry we could not get to that. Okay, I'm just going to throw the meat on the table and you all take it away. We got about 1:45 left. President-elect Donald Trump, cabinet appointments. Don, go.
So let's take politics out of it because you can imagine there's not anybody that he's going to pick that I'm going to agree with.
No.
But basing it on competence, the clown car has left the asylum. And, you take a guy like Rubio, okay, competent, I disagree with him on policy. Right. But then all of a sudden you look at Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. What a tragedy that would be if he managed to get approved. And Eddie and I spoke earlier, and I won't peg him with it, but I don't think he'll even get through a Republican Senate at this point on approval. But Matt Gaetz, Pete Hedgepeth, or the Fox News anchor for Secretary of Defense, these are horrific picks, not from policy. They're bad on policy, trust me, but on competence, and that concerns me.
Eddie, got about a minute left.
Paint me surprised, everybody, that I disagree with Don on some of that. I think
not
Pete,
all of it, though.
Not all of it. I think Pete will actually do a really good job. Again, veteran. Having been in there, I think Tulsi Gabbard is actually a good pick for national intelligence. However, I agree with Don that I don't think Matt Gaetz was the best pick for Attorney General, especially considering
maybe the worst.
We're not going to go there, but but considering the ethics probe that's still hanging over him, the charges that are out there, there were plenty of other competent people that would have made a better choice in my mind. But obviously, I'm not president. That's what President-elect Trump is doing. So we'll see what the rest of the cabinet looks like as it shakes out over the next week or so. But again, I do believe, like Don said, that just what I'm hearing and seeing already, I believe he's going to have a hard time in the Senate.
Going to be interesting. Eddie, Don, we appreciate you being on this Sunday morning. We appreciate you watching Inside Tennessee. We will be back next Sunday.